for too long. But yeah, lots of catching up to do.
Yeah.
But I hope you guys are good and you had a good summer as well.
Yeah, I couldn't take real vacation, unfortunately.
You didn't? Okay.
No, after the IETF meeting, more stuffs came up to do, necessarily in August. So I'll try
Okay.
to have vacation later this year, but for now I'm at 0 days.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Be careful. You're going to end up having to take vacation, with the laws in Sweden.
Yeah.
They're going
You
to
have
force
to.
them on you.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I
Or
have.
they say, be sure to schedule maintenance, or maintenance will be scheduled for you.
I hope someone puts me on maintenance.
Jim used to make fun of me all the time because I took, according to him, I took too many vacation days. So I don't know what he would have said of 5 months of parental leave. But
the US is an unfair comparison, or baseline,
yes,
whatever.
definitely. How are you, Christian? How is the little one?
Fine. He's with me a lot these days because I'm on, say, 85% parental leave right now.
Okay.
And he's growing and had his first boat trip, so all's very well.
Boat trip.
Yep.
Okay, how cool. He's one already, right?
No, 10 months.
10 months, okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
For a country
How's
like
Leonardo doing?
Boat trips
Sorry?
are, for a landlocked country like Austria, boat trips are, very, very, very rare and valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unlike Sweden,
for any country.
the end of the pier, or Italy, right? You just go down the end of the street and then you fall in the water, and then a boat.
Yeah, we don't necessarily have boats though.
Oh, that's true.
Most
right?
of us.
You don't have the boats. Yeah. Oh no, a boat, not your boat, but a boat.
Yeah.
How's Leonardo doing?
Leonardo is doing great. He's 13 months now, and he just like yesterday he took his first steps.
Awesome.
So it's really exciting. So we're getting to the point that we're gonna have to keep remodeling our apartment to remove tables and dangerous flower pots and plants and yeah. So
my kid didn't crawl at the beginning. Like he was 6 or 7 months old and he wasn't crawling.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went to a birthday party for a 1-year-old, and there was all, these 1-year-old-ish around, walking and crawling and whatever. And he was just like, what? No one told me I could do this. Right? Exactly. Like he was like, what the? Okay. And so then that night we woke up at like 2 a.m. He's crying. And what did he do for the next week? He crawled in his sleep until he banged his head on the side of the crib.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, well, do it during the day, dude.
Yeah, it's incredible to see how quickly they learn and develop and all of that. So yeah, I really enjoyed this time, and we were in the south of Italy, which honestly, like, it wasn't that good of an idea given the floods and everything that was happening with our usual luck. But yeah, we were at the beach for a month, and he was like tasting the sand and enjoying the water. It was really nice. But yeah, anyway, sorry, enough about me. I didn't mean to take over the working group meeting. I will be now quiet and just listen, and hopefully I get an update how things are going.
Yeah, there's one announcement you maybe want to make about the OSCAR ad hoc document.
Yeah, I just so I asked Paul, since he was the one who brought ad hoc to completion, and he has all of the A stuff, and I think he's aware, like he's the best person. So he has accepted now, like 10 minutes ago, to shepherd the ad hoc core document. So he's now the responsible AD.
Great.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so being 5 past, I think we can start or continue with the meeting, but welcome everyone. We are resuming today the interim meetings for the co-working group. I am Marco Tiloca, my co-chairs are Jaime Jimenez and Kirsten Borman. And as usual, the not well applies. Get familiar with that if you're not already. It's not just about IPR and patents and so on. It's also and especially about our code of conduct. So be nice and professional with each other. And the agenda for today is, well, a quick announcement that we get from Karsten about an extra meeting for T2TRG intended for Prague. And then moving on with documents, we'll cover Qualcomm and especially Young Seed, then href, and then work towards a potential document, core-clar, paired with some discussions around issues related to Blockwise, especially. That happened this week. Any more items or any agenda bashing? Anyone? Hearing, reading, none. Then, Karsten, please go ahead with the announcement.
Yes, so CORE is usually working closely with Think2Think Research Group, which is an IETF research group, often looking at more long-term considerations, and not specifically at standards just yet. And we have had an extended period of meeting in interims, in virtual interims only. We want to use the Prague meeting as an opportunity to maybe meet in person again. So on the Friday before the IETF, the Friday before the hackathon, we will meet for a physical interim. And we are currently setting up the program for that. If you're on the T2TRG mailing list, Ari set up a page where you can indicate your interest and maybe even suggest a topic. So please use that page, even if you haven't fully completed your planning yet. Please use it so we have some better basis for scheduling. So Friday, November 3rd, in Prague, in the meeting hotel. At least it currently looks like that. We haven't had final confirmation for the room yet, but this has worked out well previously. We will meet for a day of doing forward-looking things that may also be of interest to the core working group.
Thanks, Karsten. And you have in the chat and in the minutes a link to the short survey for collecting plans for participation and possible topics.
Thank you very much.
All right, then we can move ahead with Young Seed or Qualcomm and all the other topics. I think they're all in the same slide set.
Yeah, so let me just open that slide set. Okay. So it's a short slide set. I hope we will have more discussion than me presenting things. And I want to talk about the Qualcomm work, about the href CI work, and about corrections and clarifications. So my Qualcomm segments always begin with this slide. So you probably have seen that before. So we have 4 documents. that comprise Qualcomm. One is an RFC already, the CBOR encoding of for Yang data. That CBOR encoding is most efficient if it gets SIDs, and the way these SIDs are allocated is defined in the core SID document. That actually was in the ISG already, and we found a few problems with that, which made the ISG push this back to the working group. So the question is, when can we push this over again to the ISG? We have a Qualcomm document for which working group last call passed, and there may be some minor things to do. And we have a core Yang library document that probably needs some more eyes looking at it and seeing whether in the time it has ripened in our repositories, how much has the Yang world changed, and do we need to make any changes to the Yang library as well. So I'm not going to talk about Yang library today. I'm going to talk about core SID and core COMI. So core SID had a new version yesterday evening. For quite a while, we have tried to get the tooling into shape that is used to generate the example there. And I spent a couple of days actually trying my hand at this as well. That is definitely a good idea. But it also takes some real time to do that, in particular because the PYang tool itself doesn't have a very active maintainer at this point in time. So we just have to plan for relatively long times until PRs actually merged and so on. So what we will do is actually we will have a core fork or branch of this tool for a couple of months, and then we will finally try to get this into the mainline PYang tool. So the PYang tool right now creates output that is both incorrect and incomplete, and we have to do a couple of patches. Nothing major, but it's a significant program, so it takes some significant thinking to get this right. So what I instead did was I manually fixed the example towards what I think the example should be. Yeah, with that, it should be ready for working plus call again. So we have had extensive discussion about what should be in there, and there's one question I come to in a minute. The COMI document was submitted before 117 deadline as -14 with the various fixes and simplifications that we had discussed, and in particular with an IPC example. And that actually, as good examples often do, reminded us that maybe we don't have to take all the complexity of RESTconf here and can simplify this some more. So it now has post operations for RPC and actions that skip the input and output identifiers, because yeah, that's kind of redundant. Nora?
Yes. What do you mean by a skip? It means that you just put the seeds that are in there, the input, or if there is nothing, you skip it?
Well, since it's clear at any point in time whether you actually are providing input, that would be a post request, or delivering output, that would be response to the post request, you just don't have to have that information in the data structures that are being interchanged. So we also don't need a SID for CoreConf for that, but of course we want to provide the SIDs for RESTconf. So that has no change on the direction we have taken for the core SID document, but it really simplifies. So best look at the example in the COMI document, which is now, I think, very streamlined, very simplified, and having this redundancy really didn't do anything useful. So it's good that this is gone.
Okay, thank you.
So there was one more item that Diana asked us to do. So there is now a COMI-15. And at this point, really, I would like to see reviews from people who have implemented this or are otherwise involved with COMI. So please, if you are interested in the CoreConf world, please review the COMI document dash 15. So that's all I was planning to say on COMI. So this has been sitting there for months already because of all the vacation times. But when you come back from your vacations, please do a review of that. Now to the new core SID version. As you remember, the SID files we generate to accompany Yang models, which provide numeric identifiers for the text-based identifiers in those models. Those are in Yang JSON now. And it appears not to be too easy to edit them by hand because people have been making mistakes in the past. So I tried to not edit them by hand either, and wrote a little tool that converts the Yang JSON into CSV, into separated values, which you can feed into Excel if you are so inclined, or some other tool, and then you can convert them back into a valid SID file. And I wrote this tool in such a way that the JSON to CSV converter actually undoes all the weirdness that the current version of pyang does. So you can even put this into your workflow without editing the CSV file at all, because the conversion already fixes some of the weirdness there. Anyway, so the question that we had discussed since June or so was what exactly are the identifiers that are getting used in an RPC or action. And so the incorrect identifier 1716 that we had in the example, this has now been replaced by 1775 and 1776. So 1775 is only for RESTconf, and 1776 is what would be used in RESTconf and CoreConf. I chose to give these things new numbers. Since this is still a draft, I could have decided to reuse old numbers. For instance, the daytime input could have gotten the 1716, but I think it's less confusing since the old version has been around for so long. It's less confusing to use new numbers for these two things. So as far as I understand Yang, we are done. We can push this back to the ISG. However, there's also a version, several people have tried to fix pyang. There's also a version of pyang that actually generates identifiers or SIDs for identifiers that I think never will occur on the wire. So for instance, the set current datetime RPC out of the IETF system module, that only has an input. So we could say every RPC should have an input and an output, even if the output is never encoded anywhere, because both RESTconf and CoreConf have ways to elide that. But it's kind of theoretically there. It's a phantom of an output that will never be used. But to me, it seems simpler to just not generate these identifiers, because I'm not seeing a reason why these identifiers would be used. So this is the time to discuss this. Laura?
Yes, I think it's good not to put them, because if there is no definition after, we don't need it. And if we have to augment a model to put them, then we'll generate seed at this time.
Yeah, so what you're saying is essentially that the downside of missing a number here is limited, because we can always generate numbers for them. Of course, that's still some overhead for people who are trying to use this. But because I don't know anybody who would be trying to use these phantom identifiers, I think we are on the safe side here.
Because in the young model, when you don't have output if you have nothing specified. So
yeah, I think the interesting observation is that the SID file might have completely bogus SID assignments that are not defined anywhere in the model, and things would still be fine because nobody would be using them. So the downside of having too much in there also is limited. But I think it just complicates things, confuses people. So let's not do that. Good. So we have about half of the people in the room know enough Yang to be able to answer this question. So if you could give a quick temperature reading, I would be grateful.
There was a green light from Evo in the chat, by the way.
Okay, good. I don't have that window open at the moment.
And same from Christian, as far as I can read.
Yes. Great. Yeah, so I think the disposition of this document now is that we have done the work that the working group needs to do, and the chairs, I'm not a chair here because I'm a co-author, the chairs need to decide whether they can do a publication requested again on this document.
On Yang said we wanted to have one more working group plus call, right? Was also mentioned a few slides before. Yeah. And I think that was the plan originally in parallel with Core-20230830-1400, but not necessarily. In Core-20230830-1400, you wanted to check with the co-authors, but yeah, if you want to take 1 or 2 days more for that, that can even happen separately.
Yeah, so the co-authors have been on alert since the 117 meeting. So okay, so I'm going on vacation next week on Tuesday. So whatever needs to be done, I need to do now, or it will only be done later in September. Yeah, but I think we can take that offline. How exactly we are going to do this?
Okay.
Okay, but the objective should be that by the start of next week, we can do a working class call for these 2 documents, and the chairs have to decide which length of working class call it needs to be, and so on.
Yeah, I believe 1 week should be enough, considering all the work already happened on this. Netmod should be put in CC, like for previous last calls.
Yes.
But yeah, sounds good to start it early next week for both documents in parallel, ideally.
Great. So, Michael, do you have any comments from your recent implementation work?
Hi. Sorry, there's a parallel NIST meeting happening.
Oh.
Yeah. So I guess I did put something in the agenda on implementation report, I guess. And so you found a bunch of bugs where the implementation is not caught up with the document. And I will attempt to update things. Some of the later changes are still on pull requests. That's very hard to run the right version of Yang sometimes. And so I would certainly appreciate other reviews of those pull requests. I can post them to the core list if that's useful.
So my proposal would be that we use the repo of the core working group.
Yeah, I noticed you had a pull request against that. So I can do that. It's a little bit actually hard on GitHub to actually change the upstream of a thing. You wind up having to fork things again, but that's okay.
You simply have to create another pull request.
No, you actually need to fork it again from the one you want as the upstream, or it creates the pull request.
No, you don't. You don't.
Well, all right. So you say that, but I've been through this through GitHub support multiple times, and the answer is sometimes what you say works, and often it does not. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. It's solvable. The latest piece is with the status stuff, and so that's complete. The issue is, I think actually has to do with the do we need phantom identifiers like this? Is that probably the current code does not adequately number all of the things that perhaps it should, and I don't have a it's probable that there are missing examples to actually catch the places where it doesn't do things like and it should. And I don't consider that to be a showstopper, just a bug, right? Someone will come along with and say, oh, I need something or other numbered, and it didn't get numbered, and they'll have to figure that out.
Yep.
So I don't think that's a terrible thing. I think the bigger question is longer term, in 3 years, when someone finds a bug, who's going to know this code well enough to actually determine whether the fix is actually appropriate. So that's actually the bigger question that I think I sent an email to Francesca yesterday or something about that. So I think that's the end thing. The other side of it to me is that when it comes to users of this this mechanism, such as over in Anima, where we have data structures that are not RPCs, that there is a frequent lack of understanding about that process within the Yang community. So you get Yang reviews that kind of don't make sense.
I asked a question on NetBot yesterday, and I said this is for data in flight and not data at rest. And of course, the comments, I mean, these were helpful comments, I'm not complaining, were about data at rest again. It's really different. It's not in the hands of the people who are doing Yang.
Yeah. So that's the problem. And I got to talk on the other one.
Okay, but there's nothing getting in the way of finishing this 21. Good. So let's go to the next item. And this is essentially just a working in progress report. So you remember that the core href document defines CIs and CI references, which are concise equivalents of URIs and URI references. So you never have to have a parser for URIs and all their idiosyncrasies in a constrained device, but can directly use the CRIs even for generating co-op options and so on. This is pretty complete, and we solved the problem about efficiently encoding URI schemes by simply assigning numbers to each of them. We have to work with IENA to provide a way to make this happen. But since IENA is currently in the process of revising their internal procedures, we probably will need to live with a little bit of uncertainty here for a few more months before we understand how this is ultimately going to work. Dash 13 went into working group last call, which finished before IETF 117, before the meeting actually at IETF 117. And we got an extensive review from Marco, which I think we now have covered in PR number 75, which again itself needs reviews. We have one point open, which is just clerical work, updating the changes section. So somebody has to sit down and then do a PR for that. We still have the need for test vectors. There's a little bit of editorial work, and I'm afraid this will not happen before my or not complete before my vacation. So this will probably draw until mid-September or so. But one thing came up that I think is really important here. The CI is defined as a data structure, fine, but we are not really saying how this is supposed to be integrated. And given that we are the core work group, it kind of seems obvious that we have to have co-op options that use those. And as I said, the normal co-op options are actually a good mirror of CRI, so we don't have to do very much there. But under the objective to no longer have to include URI parsers in our devices, we probably should also provide an analog to proxy URI that is based on CRIs. So this is a pretty obvious thing to do. We just don't have text for it yet, but that should be easy to generate. And similarly for proxy scheme, which is now string-based, there should be an analog called proxy scheme number that uses the scheme number that we now have for every URI scheme, which provides a very compact encoding. Since we don't have negative numbers in co-op options, we just mirror the negative number to a non-negative number. So -1 becomes 0, -2 becomes 1, and so on. So the co-op scheme actually has an encoding length of 0, and co-op S has an encoding length of 1 byte. So this is fine, I think. So these options need to be added, probably in an appendix to the specification, and all the things like finding a good option number and so on have to be done. And then we would have a dash 14 and maybe another working group plus call. We are getting good in doing these 1 week second working group plus calls, and then we would ship it. So any comments on this?
Just that it sounds good as a time plan, and yeah, I think a 1 week last call more help, especially on the new part, but it can be focused on the new part, on the options.
Yeah, realistically, right now, pushing the button on a document going into the ISG is not an urgent thing, because the queue needs to go down to a reasonable size. So if we do this 1 week earlier, that's not going to help us a lot. So I think we have a little bit of time for getting this right.
Noted.
Good. So with that, let's move on to corrections and clarifications. So we had an idea a long time ago, I think 2017 or so, to have a document that gathers corrections and clarifications after we found out that it's not so easy to do an FAQ-like document like the one that we had started in the LWIC working group. So an FAQ for implementers might have done a similar job, but we decided it would be good to focus on corrections and clarifications and not on explaining. We have this document, and it has been revived. And in particular, we have a GitHub repository that has some 30 issues right now, some of which have quite lively discussions. And these discussions also interact with discussions that happen in implementation repos. And right now, there is an interesting thread in the California repo where they are discussing issues around blockwise transfers and fetch and so on. So let's dive into this specific issue for a moment before we come up to the service again and discuss how we continue working on this document. So let's quickly talk about the current discussions about blockwise transfer. Again, this is a pull request in the California repository. And what happened there was the Californium client exhibited some specific behavior that is not required by the protocol, but it just happened to work that way and do token reuse for all requests that together constitute a blockwise transfer. And that's definitely a choice that Californium could do. RFC 9175, I think, actually gives you reasons why this is not the best way to do this. So Californium recently changed that. But before Californium changed that, the Zephyr server started to rely on that behavior for its state management. And yeah, Christian in the chat says facepalm. Okay, but that's what happens. And then Californium changed and things broke. And the pull request actually is about putting an option into the Californium client to reinstate the old behavior. So essentially, catering for Zephyr's deviant expectations of what a client needs to do. So we have two levels on which we need to discuss this. One is, of course, that people are running systems out there and they may not be able to fix their servers because they are somewhere in a wall, and so you might not have control over the server and the software state that runs on that thing. So some form of emergency fix is definitely needed. But of course, the downside is that if people start to perceive this as actually a fix that fixed a bug in Californium, and Californium is now doing things right again, they might write further servers that rely on this non-specified behavior. So that's a very dangerous situation we are in here, and I think we need to handle this with the utmost care. So this is one specific question, and the question, of course, is why are the Zephyr people doing that? And the problem, of course, is that one problem is that RFC 9175 took its time, so that the tools you need to solve all these problems only recently have become available, and in particular, I think the request tag option isn't even implemented in California, so you couldn't just start using request tag here to solve that state management problem, to properly solve that state management problem. So that's always a problem. When we introduced fetch for about half a decade, people were saying, yeah, but not everybody has implemented fetch, and therefore you need to provide a get alternative as well. And it took us half a decade to get rid of that argument. So that's definitely something that needs to be thought about. But the other observation is that there are more issues around blockwise transfer, and in particular fetch. And the reason for that is that we made one mistake when we defined 8132. So we thought the combinations of block 1 and block 2 already occur with post transfers. So there is no new problem for fetch with large request and response bodies. So situations where you need both block 1 and block 2. But that's not actually true, because post requests are rarely stateless. So you cannot react to a CoAP request that gives you the third block of a post. That very rarely makes sense. I mean, you might have an application where you are giving post a specific semantics where that makes sense, but normally a post request is not stateless. So the server actually opens state when the blocks for the post requests come in, and then if the server sends back the response, it has state to put back the block 2 parts of that response. But that's not true for fetch. Fetch can actually be implemented stateless in many situations. And if you actually want to do that, that means that all the block 2 transfers, each of the block 2 transfers, need to send all the block 1 blocks each time. So if you have n block 1 transfers and m block 2 transfers, in reality you get an n by m number of transfers, and that's what I called ridiculous in the other repo discussion. So the argument of 8132 fetch works like post wasn't really thinking through the situations. So we may have to do something about this. And of course, we want to do this right. We also want to do a minimum change. So I think some thinking is going to be required to solve this problem with a minimum amount of trouble generated for implementers and implementations. So I'm not suggesting we do that design now here in this meeting. I think we need a little bit more preparation for that, but I would like to bring this up as an example for a correction and clarification issue that actually requires our attention and our timely attention. So we cannot let this sit for another year or so. We really have to make some progress on this issue and provide a canonical answer to this. Okay, so that was my dive here into a specific issue. And now let's get back to the corrections clarifications process. Marco was kind enough to write up short process document, which is summarized on this slide, that says how we want to do this corrections clarifications work. Very important. So that's the process link on this slide. An important focal point of this work is the issues on the GitHub repository for the corrections clarifications document. So this is where we already have discussion, sometimes a lot, sometimes a little, for almost 30 issues that we need to discuss. So these may be editorial issues, these may be technical issues. That's of course all work we need to do to actually classify these things and define a disposition for each of the comments. And there's also a core FAQ document, which is a wiki of the core working group, where we can put material that we want to put out quickly. So we don't want to wait for someone writing a document. And maybe we don't even have to write that document at all and just keep the information in the wiki. If that is sufficiently referenced, that may be good enough. Christian.
Does it make sense to delay working group adoption until we have categorized and decided all the individual items? I think it would be helpful for, especially from a public perspection point of view, to adopt this as soon as we are happy with the process and as soon as the document reflects the process. And then we basically, if we go through each issue with the working group anyway, we don't have to, then we already are making a working group decision, which would also allow us to change the document later. So I suggest we pull working group adoption to the front as soon as we have the process set up that this is a working group document, because then we can point people at, hey, the working group is kind of, we are not finished, but the working group is active on this, and this is official enough that you should hold your horses on implementing workarounds unless you need them and are prepared to revert them.
Good point. So the slide says we do adoption after we have done one pass through the issues, and what you are saying is maybe we should do adoption early so people know that there is a new focal point for getting these issues resolved. That actually is a working group activity and not a private activity of the author of this document.
So before 3 or even before 2?
Well, this misses a 0, put the process into the document. And so we would actually do the adoption call after 0.
Yeah, the 0 is really part for item 4A here. So I think 4A should become 0, and then you should do 5, and then 4 is just remains just 4B.
Yeah.
So this can come back already in a future soon interim meeting.
Yeah, so that integration of the process into the document needs to be done. And then we should do the adoption call, I think.
So perhaps the revised process can be transferred already in the GitHub repo of core-clar, because this is coming from a separate repo that, by the way, I think is still set private. So it's possible that people cannot access that TXT right now.
Oh, right.
But yeah, if we transfer it and we finalize it there.
Well, we can dump the text into the draft, so we don't have to have
Sure.
a separate repository. Let's do that really quickly, and then we can start editing the text.
Mhm. Okay, thanks.
So this is my last slide.
Right. Any more input or comment, question, anyone? Okay, we are at the video. The only point I can think about is due to chairs unavailability, we'll have to cancel the interim meeting in 2 weeks on September 13. So the next one would be on September 27. And I have the feeling we'll come back at least with the topics we have today. Or am I missing anything more, Karsten?
Well, nothing comes to mind, but
okay, so I can cancel the next interim in 2 weeks after this call. And then again, the next one should be on September 27. Okay, in the meanwhile, we know what to do on this document survey today. Okay.
so I will quickly submit a version of the document with the process document pasted in and maybe polish it a little bit so that it's slightly more understandable. So that will give us something to discuss this week before I finish into my vacation.
Okay. Christian.
Just a brief question, coming back to the reusing the token inside a block transfer thing, because there's probably not much sense in me dogpiling onto the comments that are already in the 2088 pull request. Is there a concrete issue in on the Sapphire side that one could weigh into? Because I think that's really where the action needs to be. Like if Californium wants to still do it this way, personally, I think it's apart from that, not forcing other implementations to do it right. It's not really bad behavior, especially considering the non-traditional request point of view. So nothing bad happens because Eclipse does it this way, except for the other implementations, and that's where we should where I would like to weigh in.
Yeah, so we would need to find the actual Zephyr implementation that has this property, and so we could ask on the 2088 where that implementation is being discussed.
Yep, I'll do that. Thanks.
Thank you. So just on the status of this 2088, that is already merged. So Californium now has or will have in the next release an option for reinstating the old behavior. So that little bit of damage is already done, but I think it's important to alert the Zephyr server that the problem is not gone, because that's just a Californium specific change. Thanks.
Okay, so we are really at the end of the agenda, apparently. Does anyone have any more input or things you want to discuss?
Yeah, just a reminder, people fill in the T2TRG form so we know what we want to discuss there. And don't forget to do your travel in such a way that you can be there on Friday.
That will be challenging. I'll do my best.
What's the distance between Prague and Vienna?
Like 4 hours. So it's if need be, yes, the things can be made happen there.
Good, thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing else, then we can close the meeting. Again, we'll cancel the interim meeting in 2 weeks, and the next one will be on the 27th of September. Till then, talk to you on the mailing list.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.